Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Sri Tips, and today what we're going to talk about is silver refining. Laid out on this table in front of me here is a group of sterling silver items, candlestick holders and some sterling silver bowls, some sugar and creamer dispensers made out of sterling silver, salt pepper shakers, and back here I've got some sterling silver flatware, and over here I've got a bunch of 90% United States minted silver coins. And what I'm going to do with this material is demonstrate how I refine it into pure silver crystal. Okay, before we get started here, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the material that I'm going to be using to refine here. This is sterling silver. I don't know if you can see that marking on there. It says sterling silver on the bottom. If a maker of these products is going to go to the trouble of making it out of fine silver, or sterling silver, which is 92.5% silver, what they'll usually do is put a mark on the bottom of their pieces. And normally, if it's not marked sterling silver, it's not going to be sterling silver. So you can see the mark there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Some of them are real faint, but they will be marked on the bottom as sterling silver. Okay, what we have over here is a grouping of solid sterling silver flatware, and the way that I determine if this is actually silver or not, rather than silver plated, is on the back of each piece the maker will put a stamp on there that says sterling. If it doesn't say sterling on the back of this piece of silverware, then it's probably going to be silver plated. It'll say sterling right on it. Anyway, I got a couple of sets of sterling there, and we're going to be using that to refine with. One more component to the refining here is a bunch of scrap jewelry that I've got here in this little container. I've already removed all the springs and non-silver metal and other material, stones and so forth, from this jewelry, and we'll be working with this as well. Scrap 925 sterling silver jewelry. I've got a bunch of silver coins. There's a bunch of silver dollars here, some dimes, got a whole couple bags of quarters, some more silver dollars, more quarters, a whole bunch of tubes of quarters here. Here's a whole bunch of sacks of 90% silver dimes. Back here I bought some items at a garage sale here recently. It's silver coins, silver dimes here. And they had them sitting in the back shelf there with a price tag for 20 bucks. So I bought every one of them that they had. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and begin by mechanically cleaning these pieces of silver. And what I mean by that is I'm going to remove all non-metallic material from all this, so that all I have is sterling silver. The coins, I'm not going to refine those. I'm going to keep those just like they are, and I would recommend to anybody thinking about doing this to leave the silver coins like they are. They're a known quantity of silver minted by the United States government, and they will be tend to have a little bit of a premium value to them. So I wouldn't mess with those. You can use the silver coins and convert the silver coins into the pure silver crystal here, but I would recommend you don't do that. And this pure silver crystal is what our final product will be when I get done refining the silver. And as you can see, it's real high purity silver, Probably close to about 5/9 fine. Some of this has been run back through the silver cell 2 times, so it's been double refined. And this is some very high purity silver. This is a silver that I use to make my pure silver bars. And we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to convert all this silver material right here into pure silver crystal. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and clean this silver up. I'm going to make sure and wear a pair of gloves here. You don't even want to think about doing this without gloves because this metal is razor sharp and it will slice your fingers apart. What I'm going to do is take all the weighted material out, put it in the trash, and then put the pieces of silver right down here in this little bucket. Alrighty, I've got all the weighted material taken out of the sterling pieces. I've got my flatware here, my jewelry items here. These are pieces of bowls that I've taken the weighted material out. The only thing I really have left to do here is these knives, and I just want to show you one of these right quick. The knife has a stainless steel blade, and it's got a sterling handle with some cement inside of it. So what I have to do is break that, get it started here, and just kind of slowly peel the metal back away down the length of the blade there. It's a pain in the butt to do. It takes a long time to do it. And so I just wanted to demonstrate that these knives are not all sterling silver. This part here, there's some weighted, this is stainless, and there's some weighted material, some cement in here. But this coating is going to be sterling silver. And I found that these knives are about 8 or 10 grams of sterling each. Alright, I've got all the sterling silver flatware here. Here's all the jewelry items that have been cleaned up mechanically. Here's all the silver dishes and candle holders and salt and pepper shakers and so forth. Here's some more of that material here. And here, if you recall from some of my gold refining videos, this is going to be dilute nitric acid that was used to dissolve out silver out of the gold that I had imported, and I saved it in these jars. Well, these jars are full of silver solution, and there's still nitric acid in here that can dissolve silver. So I'm going to use this up by pouring these silver jars into these large 4-liter beakers here, and I'm going to use this solution first to go ahead and dissolve the first bits of my silver here. Okay, I've got the dilute nitric acid solution that already has a bunch of silver and other metals in it in my beaker here. I'm going to go ahead and turn my fan on. And then I'm going to take a torch and I'm going to start burning all this metal, heating it to redness, and burning all the flammable material off of it. And then I'll add it to the beaker. burning the metal like this burns off any oils, greases, wax, or other combustible material. And if I didn't do this, and if I just threw it straight in the acid, those materials could cause a greasy film to form inside my solution, something I want to try to avoid here. Now I'll do the same with this side. Again, this is silver that was dissolved from incorporated gold solutions. It still has active nitric in it that can dissolve silver. So I'm going to use it first to use up all the residual nitric that's in this solution that I'm pouring in this beaker. Now I'll start adding silver to this beaker. Okay, both of these are pretty full now. Go ahead and put the lid on, cut some heat on them, and we'll go ahead and let these react. The reaction has been taking place now for about 30 minutes or so. What I'm going to do is go ahead and there's some room in there now because the silver is dissolved. I'm going to go ahead and add some more silver. Okay, we've got both beakers back full of silver again. Still got quite a bit of stuff left here that has to be incinerated and then added to the two beakers. So we'll just keep doing this until all that nitric acid runs low, and then we'll go from there. Both of the beakers have been on heat now for about a little over an hour. If you notice, this one here has slowed way down in the reaction. Hardly any fumes in there. This one's still going pretty good, but it's slowed down significantly as well. So what I'm going to do, I've got some water here, distilled water, just a little over 200 ml. And I'm going to add some nitric acid to that slowly and make a 50-50 solution of dilute nitric acid here. Now what I'm going to do is check the temperature on this. It's going to be hot, so I got to be careful adding that dilute nitric in there. And it looks like we've got 186 degrees Fahrenheit, 85.6 degrees Celsius. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit more nitric acid in this, see if I can get this reaction invigorated a little bit. I'm going to add it real slow here. because it's going to want to take off right quick because it's hot. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and add just a few ml there just to get this thing going. We'll add it slowly, a little bit at a time until we get all that silver dissolved. Both beakers have been on here a little over 2 hours now. The reaction is stalled in both of them, which means that all the nitric, or most of it anyway, has been used up out of my silver solutions that I began with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some 50-50 dilute nitric acid here to each one and get things going again. I'm going to add it slow. First, before I do that, let me get the temperature here. Alright, that's 84.6 degrees centigrade, 184 Fahrenheit. That's 190 Fahrenheit, 87.8 centigrade. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some nitric acid here. I'm going to do this real slow because it's going to be hot. It'll take off on me if I put it in there too fast. Let these continue to dissolve here. This one looks like it's getting ready to run away on me. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off, bring it out off the heat, and let it overspill into this container here if it takes off on me, which it did not, thankfully. Now this one's starting to run away on me. What I'm going to do is just take the lid off, take it off the heat for a minute, let it calm down. What happens here is when I added that 50-50 dilute nitric, it goes in and it kind of, due to the difference in density between the 50-50 dilute nitric and the solution that's already in the beaker, the dilute nitric will tend to hang around on the top of the solution here and just kind of float on top of it. And then as it begins to react, the bubbling action starts to stir it up, and then it gets down here and starts stirring from underneath, and it gets the whole solution going. And it comes in contact with that hot metal, and then the reaction gets real vigorous like that. So I think we can control it just by taking it off the heat there, letting it simmer down here for a few minutes, and we'll put it back on the heat. Now that things have calmed down a little bit, go ahead and add a little bit more silver to each one. When digesting silver like this, the goal is to get the silver dissolved as quickly and safely as possible. It requires a little bit of a balancing act between getting the right amount of silver and the right amount of acid, the right amount of heat, all to come together in a safe way to get this silver dissolved as quickly as possible. Both of the beakers have been on here reacting now for right at 7 hours, and I've got all of the sterling silver from the bowls and the candle holders into the beakers now. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn this heat down on low and just let it set for a while, and use up all the available nitric acid that I can, and then we'll go ahead and cool this off and filter it out. The silver has been on now. I left it on overnight on low heat, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and let these solutions cool down. Alright, we got 74.4 Celsius, 166 Fahrenheit. On this one we got 131 Fahrenheit, 55.2 Celsius. And I left those things on overnight, went to bed, And I came out this morning. It's been about 8 hours since I knocked off, so these things have been sitting there for about 8 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat off now and let these cool down so we can do a filtration on it. It's important to point out here that there's a bunch of undissolved silver left in the bottom of these beakers. I've even got one spoon over here. I put him in last night before I went in and went to bed. This one's got a spoon in it, and it's got some leftover silver down here. This is important to have because we want some leftover silver in the bottom of the beaker to ensure that we've used up all the free nitric acid. When I go to the next operation, which is cementing this silver out with copper, I do not want a bunch of free nitric acid in there because it will needlessly consume the copper and it will dissolve the silver just as fast as it cements out onto the copper. So I want to consume all the free nitric acid out of these containers before I do this filtration. And I'll go to the next step. I've taken both of the jars of silver down off of the heat. They're down here cooling now. I want to say it one more time. This is so important. Notice that there's undissolved pieces of silver in each one of these containers. That is important because we want to see undissolved pieces in each container to make sure that all the free nitric acid has been consumed before we go to the next step. Okay, I'm just going to do a little review here. I got all the pieces of sterling silver that I had in this bucket. It's all inside these containers, and most of it has been dissolved. I haven't even touched the jewelry yet, and I put a couple of spoons in here to consume excess nitrate. But other than that, all the silver flatware still has to go in. So that's where we are right now. Both solutions have been allowed to cool down to ambient temperature, which today is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, that one's 34 centigrade, 93 Fahrenheit. This one says 89 Fahrenheit, 31.8 centigrade. All right, here I have a tube. I'm going to fill this up with distilled water. Got to use distilled water here because we're working with silver nitrate in solution. Can't use tap water. I've started my vacuum pump. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this tube inside the beaker and siphon the solution down here into a flask through a filter. Put the end of my thumb over the tube, stick the other end up here in my solution, let my finger off the tube, and then siphon the silver nitrate solution down here into the funnel. It's better than pouring it. If I was to pour it, some of the contents has settled in the bottom of this beaker. Pouring it over into the funnel, into the filter there, would cause some sediment to come over and would quickly load up that filter paper. So siphoning out like this is much better. Okay, I've maxed out this flask, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this flask that's full of silver off. Put the funnel right in here. Move this one out of the way. It's full of, it's 4-liter beaker, or 4-liter flask, full of dissolved silver. And well, I've got a couple liters left up here on the table. Set this flask up and just continue the filtering operation. I've got about 2 liters of solution up here left to filter. I got my tube full of water. Got my filter flask down here. I'm going to go ahead and siphon it on in and continue that filtering operation until I get all the silver solution filtered into these flasks. Just wanted to take a look at this filter here. It's got some sediment in it from that filtering operation. And I've rinsed it out real good with some distilled water. That sediment could contain gold and possibly some platinum group metals. So I'm going to save this filter and put it in with my filter storage. Silver is a carrier of platinum group metals and gold. So there's a good chance that there might be a little bit traces of that kind of metal in this residue in this filter here, so I want to save that. Nitric acid dissolves both silver and palladium all by itself. Here's our solution, nice and crystal clear. Here's our other one in the 4-liter jar or flask there, nice and clear, ready to go to the next step of the process here. I've got both of these solutions here filtered, nice and clear, ready for the next step. For right now, I'm going to just set those over here out of the way. And then I'm going to turn my attention back to the flatware there. I've got some distilled water here. It's got a little bit of a copper in it from some previous rinses. I save, when I rinse out my cement silver, I save that distilled water so I can reuse it. But what I'm going to do is add this distilled water. It's got a little bit of copper in it, but you can use just regular distilled water. We'll put about a liter, fill these beakers up with about a liter of this water, maybe 1,200 ml or so. And then what we're going to do is start adding some of this flatware to these beakers so we can start dissolving the flatware. Now I'm going to start burning these pieces of flatware down here. These aren't going to be as bad as the sterling silver items. You shouldn't have to heat them to redness. Just heat them up a little bit and burn off any kind of oils or junk that might be on there, and then add it to the beaker. All the silver flatware has been incinerated. I'm going to go ahead and set these now back on the burners here. And then what we're going to do next is add a little bit of heat here. And I'm going to go ahead and pour some nitric acid into each one. Probably about 100 ml in each one just to start off with. It should be at room temperature, which is not that hot right now, so we'll get away with doing this right now. But once this heats up, it'll be a different story. I have to really carefully add this stuff once it gets real hot. But for right now, I'm going to add about 100 ml to each beaker just to kick things off. Okay, we're just going to continue to add small doses of, I've got some dilute nitric acid here. Keep adding small doses of this until we get all this to dissolve, just like we did before with the other material. This is what I'll be using to cement the silver out of the silver nitrate solutions. This is Romax copper wire. I got all, here's some tubing here. I got all this stuff at yard sales. This bundle here was free. The woman said she's tired of it sitting in her garage and told me I could take it for free. That's probably about 10, 12 pounds of copper there. These were all a couple bucks a piece. People buy stuff to buy this wire to do a project, and then they only use a small bit of it, and then it just sits in their garage. And I buy it. I think I bought this one for $5 at a yard sale. And my wife got these two for a couple dollars a piece, and she bought this for $3 out at the flea market. So this is what's available to me. So this is what I'll use to cement out the silver from the silver nitrate solutions. Okay, here I've got some copper wire. This is some outdoor wiring. It's pretty thick gauge. What I'm going to do is show you a way that I found to get the skin off, or to strip it, get the coating off of it. I just take a razor blade here. I got a little screw with a piece of plastic underneath of it, and I just kind of use it as a guide, and I hold the razor blade here. There's probably a better way to do this, but this works for me. And I just kind of pull the wire along that screw in the chair there until I get it all the way down. I've got this is a 6-foot piece of wire here, and this works okay. I mean, there's, like I said, there's probably somebody out there that has a way better way to do this, but this works for me. And then I just peel it off all the way down. And there's our copper wire, all stripped off. Alright, each individual strand also has a coating on it, so I just take the razor blade and I find the perfect angle to hold it at, and then I just pull it through and strip the coating off. I'm using copper wire here because that's what I have, and it's probably not the best choice. Copper bus bar is probably better, and the reason this is not a good choice is because when it cements down, what it'll do is it'll leave little tiny pieces of wire in your silver. See how that comes right off? Alright, I'm going to do one more here. Just kind of hold the blade at an angle and get it started, and it just kind of peels that coating right off as you pull it through. Pretty handy, works okay. And when you get to the end, just pull the coating off like so, all the way down the piece of wire. I guess this isn't necessary. You could just wind that copper up, but what I did is I've got a little meat grinder here that I bought at the thrift store for $3, and I fastened a piece of wooden rod on the end of it with some screws. What I do to make this coil, I got a little hole right there. This coil of the wire, put it down in the hole like so, and flip the switch and hang on. And what I get is a little coil of wire here. Do the next one. Insert it in that little hole. Do a little bend. Flick it on and hang on. Okay, while I'm waiting for the flatware to dissolve, what I'm going to do is go ahead and start the cementing of the silver here. I'm going to add about 1 liter of distilled water to each of these beakers here. Okay, here's the copper coils. I'm just going to go ahead and lower them down into the distilled water like so. Put little hooks on them so they can hang on the edge of the beaker. Now I'm going to add some of the silver solution and start the reaction here to cement the silver out of this solution using this copper wire. Just going to add it slowly. It should start immediately. You should start seeing some silver forming on those pieces of copper. Okay, what's happening here is the silver that's in solution is coming out of solution on the pieces of copper wire. That's pure silver powder there forming on the copper, and that as it gets heavy it just kind of drops off of there. While this silver is coming out of solution onto the copper is dissolving and going into solution here. The two metals are trading places. The copper is going into solution and the silver is coming out of solution. That's pure silver metal coming out of there. Going ahead and pouring the other solution in the other beaker here. Get that started. Okay, if you take a look at this silver here, it's cementing out nicely onto the copper. I don't have any fumes forming or a bunch of silver floating to the top, which is something you want to try to avoid. If we had excess nitric acid in here, what would happen was the copper would be dissolving, the solutions would be heating up, and we'd have a bunch of fumes coming off of this. But we don't see that in here, and that's a good thing. That's what we want when we do the cementation process here. What I'll do is I'll just go ahead and leave this metal to cement out, and I'm gonna call it a night and go to bed, get some rest. And when we come out in the morning, we should have some nice cement silver in these beakers. Today is day 3 of our silver refining video. Here's our cement silver. This has been allowed to settle all night. here, I've got the flatware still dissolving. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this off by, I've got about 300 ml of distilled water in our beaker here. I'm going to add some nitric acid to make a 50-50 solution here of dilute nitric acid. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add some of that to the silver flatware up here. I'll get this started back up. Everything's at room temperature, so I can add this acid in a little bit more volume of acid here than I normally would if it was hot. And this will just start the reaction. I'm going to turn the heat on low down here, and we'll let that react. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the cement silver here. It's been allowed to react overnight. Go ahead and stir this up. The silver down here in the bottom of the beaker will tend to trap some of the silver nitrate solution, so I want to stir that up real good. Make sure and get any silver nitrate solution that's trapped down inside the cement silver down at the bottom there. Release that so that the copper, it can come in contact with that copper and get all the rest of the silver cemented out. I'll just let these go ahead and continue to react. It's been several hours since I stirred these up. The pieces of copper wire are very thin now, and so what I'm going to do is, rather than try to reuse these, still got a little bit to them, but I'm going to go ahead and stick them down here in this bucket. This bucket here is full of copper. I put all my copper refining waste down here. And so what we're going to do is pull the copper out now of each of these. See, this one here is kind of just went to pieces. That's the problem with using wire. It has a tendency to do this, go to pieces on you. The best material I think to use for cementing silver here is some copper bus bar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this residual copper, it's real small pieces, if you can see that real fine piece of wire there. I'll put this in my, this is more or less like my stock pot for silver. I'll keep that piece, that'll still work. Alright, I got all the copper wire out of this one. Got all the copper wire out of this one. There's still a piece of copper pipe in here. I'm going to reuse that. So I'll just leave that in there. All the silver has been cemented out of these solutions now. So all I've got is a bunch of copper. But what I'm going to do is put them down here in this bucket. I'm just going to pour this off. Bucket's full of copper. If there's any other precious metals in this solution, they'll cement out on that copper there. And then once all the precious metals are out of the solution, This blue liquid, which is copper nitrate, will get added to my my waste bucket, and for waste processing. A little bit of silver might go over with this, but that's quite all right because I'll be recovering the silver out of this, and then the other precious metals that cement out on that copper later on down the line. All my silver waste goes into this bucket. It's full of copper. Here's a perfect example of what I was talking about. A little piece of copper wire here. And what happens is that copper gets consumed during the cementation process and leaves little bits of copper like that in here. That's why wire is not a good choice here. Alright, I'm going to add a few more pieces of silver to each one of these beakers. More coils of silver that I copper wire that I coiled up. I'm using copper here because that's what I have. It's a readily available source of copper and can be used for cementation of silver. It's just not as convenient as like a solid piece of bus bar. Or if you notice in here, I've got some piece of copper pipe that I cut open and stuck in there. I'm gonna put some more copper in here, and then I'm gonna add some distilled water to each one, about a liter of distilled water to each one. What happens is you don't want to put the fully concentrated nitric or fully concentrated silver nitrate in here. It'll passivate the copper, form a hard crust on the copper, and then the cementation process will stop. So you want to add some distilled water. This process takes a lot of distilled water. Here's our silver nitrate concentrate solution. I'm just going to go ahead and pour that in now. And we'll just let this set and let that silver come out of solution on that copper. Give it a quick stir here, mix everything up. Okay, we're at the conclusion of day 3 here of the silver refining video. Just going to check these things out and see where we're at. Here's all our silver at the bottom of the beaker here. It's been cementing out now for about 2 or 3 hours. Alright. Here's our other jar of silver. I'm going to leave these set until tomorrow. If you look down in here, here's our copper wire. It's still pretty good shape. I'm just going to leave these set in here overnight. Here's the copper wire in the other beaker there. Just leave these set overnight. Now we'll take a look at these jars up here. If you notice, these have been on about 8 hours now. And this one here, almost all the pieces of silver are completely dissolved down there. Just a little bit of few little remnants of silver left down in there. But this one over here has got quite a few pieces left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer some of the pieces of silver from this jar over into this one. I want a little bit of silver left over when this reaction is complete to make sure I've used up all the nitric acid that's available in here. to take a couple of pieces, see how that's all corroded away and ate up the acid. And I just want to make sure I got some silver in this jar over here that will use up any nitric so that the jars are even. That should do it. Just let these set now. I'm going to turn everything off. It's the end of day 3. Well, this will conclude part 1 of the silver refining video. As you can see, there's many more steps in silver refining than there is in gold refining. I've got it to the point where I've got the silver cemented out there, and now what we'll do is we'll pick right up where we left off when I start part 2. Coming out very soon. It should be out in the next couple days, but I try to make these videos as detailed as I possibly can. Remembering when I first started refining about 8 years ago now, how nice it would have been to have some videos like these ones that I'm putting out to refer to when I went to try to do some of these processes. As a result, the video right now is already about an hour long, so I'm going to go ahead and publish this video in multiple parts. This will conclude part 1. We'll pick right up with part 2.